I want to welcome you to El Camino College. How many of it's the first time here on this campus? Okay. Oh, yeah. um, the campus is 1947?
Lucky words.
Oh, Mark Eber, faculty for the architecture and the sustainable design programs. Um, um, I am joined by Joe Lacito. Joe, where are you? Stand up. Joe is the president of the Coalition of Community College Architecture Programs. It's a nationwide organization um, uh, advocating and supporting architecture faculty at the community college level. And I'm also joined by Josh Foster. Josh is teaches at East Los Angeles College and Long Beach City College, and he is director at large on the Association of Collegiate Schools of Architecture. And the three of us collectively, along with our community college partners in Southern California, helped develop this little powwow that we're having today. I want to recognize some of our faculty. We have Dan Richardson from the architecture department, Gary Garcia, architecture sustainable design, Mina Grias, architecture sustainable design, and Ruben Jacobs, architecture. And so with that, before we get started, I would like to turn over the mic to our president, Dr. Brenda Thames, to make a few welcoming remarks.
Well, good morning. Welcome to El Camino. We only welcome you once. Once you've been here, you're considered part of the family, and our house is your house. I am truly excited that you all are here this morning. My claim to fame is that I started out as an architectural design major at UC Berkeley. But unfortunately, I did not have professors that looked like you all, that supported women of color in architecture at the time. And the program was more designed to wash out than to support and build in. So I ended up pursuing something else. But the good news is I landed up in a position where now I can support what I didn't get. And was so excited. I had a conversation with Mark about that experience. And he and Dan and Ruben took that, and what they have done over the last 3 years has been just phenomenal. We have had panels of women. We've had panels of architects of color. We've had sustainability. We've launched a sustainability degree program. We've had amazing opportunities for our students to put their skills on display in our gallery and in our local cities. I think El Segundo used one of our students' designs for the City Plaza. And so our excitement and our investment in the pathways that you are all going to talk about today this is just the next phase of the development of that. And so we are excited to partner with you and to continue to support this effort in any way that we can. So know that you have a friend and a partner in El Camino, and we truly appreciate and value the work that you are doing here today and that you will continue to do. So thank you for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Thames. I'd like to next introduce the Vice President of Academic Affairs. If it wasn't for Carlos, I'd probably be hanging from the rafters somewhere. He's been one of the staunchest supporters of our program, and I'm able to walk into his office and bend his ear about an idea we have about promoting or elevating architecture. He certainly has been a great partner in terms of starting the new sustainable design program. So with that, Carlos.
I'm sorry, Mike. Well, good morning, everybody. As I said, I'm Carlos Lopez. I actually wrote a speech, but I'm probably not going to use it. What I'm reminded of this morning is, well, first I need to thank a few people. I need to thank Mark and the architecture faculty for organizing this event and planning and trying to bring it all together. Thank you, Joe, for helping to coordinate as well. Josh, really, we wouldn't be here without your work. So thank you for that. We organize events on campus all the time, both internally and externally. And if you left it to me, you wouldn't even have coffee because I don't know how to do it. But they figured it out. They figured out how to get everybody together here for the dialogue that you'll engage in around creating additional pathways for students, career pathways for students. So creating those technicians that need to go right into the firms and the studios to begin working and hitting the ground running today. And those transfer pathways that are critically important, right? As Dr. Thames noted, she was a woman of color who started in architecture, but left the field. We know we need to diversify the profession. I'm going to tell you here today, I'm unabashedly a proponent of community colleges and our students, and I'll tell you why. I was a community college student myself. I attended a high school in California, Southern California, out in the Coachella Valley, that was consistently ranked in the bottom 25, not 25%, bottom 25 in the state. By all measure, I shouldn't be here today. And a lot of the students that we have come onto campus and participate in the architecture and sustainable design program are a lot like I was. By all measure, they shouldn't even be on this campus today. But you know what? They're here, they're succeeding, and they're forging paths forwards that you support. Whether that's a transfer pathway onto a bachelor's degree and further within architecture and design, or it's to complete degrees and certificates so that they go right into the field and work. I will tell you, I will put our students up against any student in the country 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. I get to see the work that they produce through the art gallery shows that we put on, through the examples that you see on the table. I am 100% behind this program and our students in it, 100% behind our community college students. Because if there weren't people like me at the community college when I went, I wouldn't have transferred to UC San Diego or earned a graduate degree or be here today. So I am really excited about the conversation that you're going to engage in. I'm really thrilled that NCARB is involved in this project and that this is a pilot to try to take nationwide. All pilots start small. I'm not worried that it's a small group today. In fact, I think you guys might have even deeper conversation because it isn't a wild and woolly group. Well, get wild and woolly. I believe in noisy classrooms. I wasn't an architecture person. I'm a statistician by training, so I taught math. I used to get really freaked out going into math classrooms that you could hear a pin drop in. So to me, a noisy room is a learning room and a producing room. So I hope you're able to do that today. Welcome to El Camino College. I hope you have a really productive day. I'll try to come back and check in later. I'm actually in negotiations with one of our unions today. They allowed me to step out to come say hello to you, and then I'm going to go get chained to the table again. So wish me luck. I'm hoping to survive it. So again, I'm going to hand this back over to Mark, and please have a productive day. If you have any questions or if any of you have any concerns about what's going on today, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help. So thank you. And you know how to get a hold of Lavana if there's an emergency. Lavana runs my office. She's my assistant. I just do what she says. So thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna just real quick in the folders. We give you folders. I know it only has a few things, but one of it is an agenda so that you can keep track of where we are with today's events. We're going to start off with two presentations. I'll start it off with sort of giving you kind of the big picture overview of where we are from a community college level, and then Joe's going to step in and talk to you about some of the discussions that are going on between the Coalition of Community College Architecture Programs, the Association of Collegiate Schools of Architecture, and NCARB. So with that, Joe, do you mind?
And the might consider that bullets.
You might have to.
You're gonna have to do a few. So yeah.
All right. So this started actually as a result of one of the lecture series or panels we had in connection with our Getting to Zero exhibition last spring. And it was part of the programming for SoCal NOMA. And myself and Beth from Pierce and our colleague Sheila from Santa Monica College sat on the panel and we're talking about the programs at community colleges and the process for transferring and the expectations and so forth. And so we basically met as a group, about a dozen community colleges met as a group in August, and we sort of let it be a, for lack of a better word, a kvetch session about some of the concerns, some of the barriers that our students faced the previous spring, or the transfer season, as I like to call it. And so during that session, we identified sort of three big topics, starting with, I'm going to take this off actually. Starting with the identifying the barriers to the transfer process. And we heard a lot of stories from different colleges from around Southern California, and they all seem to have very similar themes to it. And then the other thing is we wanted to establish baselines and benchmarks to see if we could better assist our students when they are involved in the transfer process. And then finally, we wanted to develop strategies to clear the path, right? So what are those things that are blocking students from moving forward? If they complete the degree here and they're able to demonstrate it successfully in their portfolio, what are the barriers that they're still confronted with?
Next.
So some of the things that came out of the original meeting were this outdated perspective about what architecture programs at the community college level are. And so I selected 1974. 1974 was the date in which this program actually was established as an independent program at community colleges. And I believe the case can be made for quite a few of our community colleges throughout Southern California. And so it was largely focused on drafting, right? Architectural technology. Today, it's actually quite different. We're a sort of a shadow of ourselves. We haven't abandoned the architectural technology or the drafting. In fact, Mr. Richardson is a specialist that he's in a small group that really understands construction documentation. And our students do leave at our program with quite a bit of knowledge of how to put together a construction set. But we've moved on, and we've incorporated more of the philosophies and topics that you would typically see at the university level. And here you're looking at studio. This is actually not during studio session. This is an off day in which students wanted to use the studio to move forward with their final projects for last semester. Next. The other thing is we found out is there was a lack of clarity. So a lot of students really were uncertain about what requirements from any one of the schools were looking for, and it built in a lot of uncertainty within the process. And so a lot of the community college folks, complain that the process is somewhat opaque. And so their thinking is we'd like to try to get some more clarity on that.
Next.
And then the pathway is uncertain, right? And it's not just the pathway towards the university, but it's even the pathway after. And so the theme here was that if there was an uncertain pathway, why would students spend all the energy and effort doing what they do at the first 2 years if they don't know where they're moving on after that? And so that was a common theme.
Next.
So the outcomes of these barriers were students got discouraged, and we heard this time and time again. They get discouraged and put off continuing their education. Or they bypassed transfer altogether and jumped into an industry, and often it wasn't architecture. Now, we're talking about students that successfully completed an architecture degree here that really touches on many of the different topics, everything from design theory, history, graphic communications, digital design, and so forth. Or they just simply dropped out of architecture and pursued other majors. So that was how we started back in August.
Next.
So we've evolved these goals because a lot has happened since we had this powwow, and we've thought about, a much broader, comprehensive view in which we all become partners. And so, I liken it to sort of just simple ABCs. I know it's a little cliched, but analyze the entire pathway for success. So not just from community college to university, but community college or even high school all the way through to industry and licensing. We want to build alliances to support our students. I think all of us here, whether you're from a baccalaureate institution or from community college, we all have the same goal. We want to support our students to get them into industry and potentially licensed. And then obviously create capacities that focus on the need. And so one of the things that community colleges are in a good position to do is we have a direct link with industry in that we cannot move our programs forward without advisory and consent from industry partners through those advisory meetings. And we actually have to submit the minutes, as part of the approval process. Next. So today the meeting objectives are kind of broad, but the idea today is to build consensus between community colleges and the institutions on instructional content. Let's see where we have differences and where we have commonalities. Highlight the links between the new competencies, which were released in October by NCARB, industry need, and the community college's role. So what do we need to do to alter our programs? Identify ways in which portfolio submission and studio placement criteria can be streamlined. Every baccalaureate institution has different criteria, different things they're looking at. And so we need to identify areas in which that can be streamlined. Establish which of the 52 industry KSAs can further anchor and inform our respective programs. And that means all of our programs, not just the community college programs. Next. So about today's community college architecture programs, there's a couple of things you might not be aware of. So we are classified, and goes with every community college, we're classified as a career training education. And that is the roots from, the 1970s architectural drafting history. We are different than the humanities, math, science, and so forth, in that we have to, our programs have to be constantly updated. And those updates are based on what industry and what data is telling us in terms of what's going on with architecture. So as I mentioned before, it requires advisory consent for us to make any of those changes or any updates. We are well suited for workforce readiness. And again, that goes back to our roots from a career training education, such as construction documentation, digital skills, and drafting, and so forth. Next. And then lastly, some of the benefits, the pathways. We are able to create pathways that specifically suit student needs. Our certifications, we provide certifications for specialized skills. So for example, one of the areas that we're exploring right now is we are exploring a certificate of achievement for digital, I forgot what we call it, digital communications. And that's where Revit and Rhino and AutoCAD and some of the other digital programs come into play. And these would be open to both students in the program and professionals who are looking to upskill, which brings me to my last one, is the opportunity to upskill and maintain credentials. So upskill, someone's, maybe knows AutoCAD, but they really want to know Revit. There's a position open, or they want to go after a position in their firm. They can now do that. In our curriculum, we offer 2 Revit classes, and now they have been modified so that one is fundamentals and one is advanced. So someone who would have let's say a certification in digital skills will be very proficient in handling a wide range of projects in Revit. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Joe, who is going to speak to you about the connection between the coalition and some of the other partners.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, I'm not going to stand up for this whole thing. I'm going to sit down. So I'm going to give you a quick abridged presentation. I'll introduce myself as well. My name is Joseph Lucido. I am the lead faculty at Palomar College Architecture Department. I'm the chair for design and manufacturing, as well as I act as the president of the Coalition of Community College Architectural Programs. We're a nationwide organization representing 165 schools of community colleges across the country. Our goal and our mission is really to kind of everything that Mark said, but bring it to the masses, right? To make sure our nation has an opportunity to have a voice. Our founder, Randy, has a great expression from Hamilton, the room where it happens, right? And I love to have it start here. This is the room where everything's going to happen. Our proposal to NCARB, which I'll show you today, is going to be hopefully piloted through all of us as an example of how we can start bridging some of these educational gaps and identifying workforce readiness in concert with university readiness. So if you could please move forward. Just the arrows. There you go. So the first thing I was asking, so I'm going to put this in the terms of my conversation with NCARB, right? So the first thing we wanted to ask him was a pathway. And we need NCARB to understand that our Coalition of Community College Architectural Programs really has to identify the pathway early for our students. We don't have the luxury all the time. Our students don't understand exactly where they're going, so that pathway is going to be a little gray. And that's okay. In fact, we want them to be in that spot. We want our architectural tours to try so we can help get them on the correct pathway, whether it's university or education. Next slide. In this process, we've been working with NCARB for about 2 years now, actually a little bit longer, but formally for 2 years. We've been kind of reviewing our work with the board and going to each one of their board sessions in which we kind of tell them what we're doing nationwide. And in this process, we came up with 3 bullet points that we're working with NCARB specifically on. First is get, and then set, and then vet. So our coalition said we need to get the data. So what we started to do is author surveys, and I'll give you that information shortly. Then we started setting the stage. How do we start introducing joint jurisdictional visits across the country? And the third is vetting the new pathway, specifically these 16 competencies. So if we can be in the room and have this dialogue, then we can start to inform this dialogue. So the first thing we wanted to bring to NCARB was that our demographics are shifting dramatically, right? And we can see this through our surveys. First off, 43.7% of undergraduate students are starting at a community college. That is a very large number of students, right? We need to acknowledge that a large pool of your university students will be starting at a local college. The next thing we have to really acknowledge here, and Mark alluded to it as well, is 60% of students are 24 years and younger. That's a big number, but the shocking number is 40% of the students are 25 years and older. So we need an NCARB to understand, and I'm sure many of you as educators understand, is that a large contingent of people that are coming into our local colleges are not 18-year-old students lost. They're adults being retooled. So how do we have NCARB, plus the coalition, plus yourselves, cast this wider net towards licensure and practice? And that means we just can't solely be on the universities. When we're talking about licensure, we need to be at our local colleges talking about licensure to get that retooling, that workforce ready. Next slide. So what we told NCARB, and I like this slide, right? Because everything is about getting them to understand. So we have 165 schools at count that are our local colleges, and we have 132 schools that belong to the ACSA. We do encourage licensure, so we kind of wanted to highlight those facts. 81% share info of NCARB and AXP hours. We work, 75% of our schools work directly with local firms, so we're tapped into that market. And most importantly, what we try to get them to understand is they're a large, untapped market. So if you're NCARB and you're trying to get people to be part of this architecture community, by getting into these local colleges and building these networks here, it's going to help them satiate that larger untapped. So now we're on to fiscal year 2025, and this is called setting the stage. Next slide, please. What we did as an organization is Formerly, our coalition was basically kind of a ragtag bunch of crew where we'd all get together and scream at the wind, right? So now we're getting a little bit more sophisticated and we're organizing ourselves. We broke our organization into 6 regions that mirror the NCARB regions. Each region has an educational ambassador, such as a school, such as school that you're at today. And what we're going to do is use these schools as our hubs so we can start to get this information to one spot and disperse it across the country. Why? Because now we can start to look at regional differences in workforce demand. The other thing we need to NCARB to understand is what Mark explained is career technical education is different than our junior colleges of the past. We're done with the word, personally, I'm done with the word of junior college. I'm calling it for now on foundational institutions. These are our foundational colleges in which an education is built upon. These are our foundational schools in which you'll build a career upon, or you'll come back to get retooled to continue on. So once a larger organization such as NCARB, and they are understanding that, and of course you guys have seen it over the years as well, once we change that paradigm in our mind, we can see the role that they're going to play, the role of these foundational institutions will play over the course of someone's education. So you can see, of course, many of you know all the different types of learning and teaching modalities we have here and the degrees that are offered. All right, here we go, the divergent pathway. This is what it's all about. For the longest time, I also sit on the education committee and I was also on the workforce ready committee at NCARB. So I've been in a lot of different roles there. For the longest time, we've seen architectural education as design first, tectonics second, right? I was fortunate enough to have an amazing third-year professor. I don't want to call anybody out, but he could be sitting in the front row, who helped me fully understand the power of tectonics first, right? So what does that mean? Our community college and our local schools need to lean into that tectonic knowledge first, right? Because when they have an opportunity at that divergent pathway, they're going to choose either to go into university or they're going to choose to go into industry. Giving them those design skills too early basically cuts that off for them. Now they only know how to do is design, but yet they don't know how to build. So we need to say, all right, local colleges, this is your role, this is your jam, and then what you're going to do is hopefully build upon that. And if you continue on to a university, you could go to a place like Cal Poly Pomona or SLO and start to grow those design skills. Not saying that we don't address design skills, but also we have to collectively understand that that's not our number one priority. Next. So here's what we are asked to NCARB is start to introduce regional symposiums. So our goal was, if we can look at our nation as 6 regions and each region has a specific need and demand, we can start to highlight workforce readiness at that region and make sure that they're university ready within that region as well. So one of the things we wanted to do is NCARB currently has regional educational summits. And that is hosted by a region, funded by that region, and all the educators are brought together. But in many cases, it removes industry in some way, and it removes our local colleges, it removes our allied professions, and it also removes non-NAV accredited schools. So you're missing a large chunk of that academic environment and a large chunk of that workforce component. So my ask to them was, can we piggyback and lace in every other year from your educational summit a symposium dedicated to workforce readiness, authored and hosted by our local colleges? And I think they were very receptive towards that, and as we work about those different details. So the next thing I wanted to bring to NCARB was, you've done the work. You've polled all of our architects across the country. And they came back with 52 KSA knowledge, skills, and abilities. And these 52 KSAs are not towards licensure, but they are specifically of how do you get a job on Tuesday. Whether you go to a university or go to your local college, what is an employer looking for? What is that employable skill set? And we can use these 52 KSAs at our regional summits to make sure, first off, at our local colleges, we're hitting these milestones. Because if they have that divergent opportunity, we need to make sure that they are truly workforce ready. But of course, our university partners can look at it and we start saying, yeah, okay, this is what we're producing. Our universities can start to say, all right, this is the portfolio that I'm receiving, right? So this is a great opportunity to showcase the work that's already been done. NCARB, in the Workforce Readiness Group, actually took it one step further and said, what does it look like in a 2-year cycle? Can this even be taught in 2 years? And our job today is to look at what depth could it be taught to, right? Next slide, please. So we take the 52 KSAs, these 52 bullet points at our local colleges, each region being slightly different, and say, okay, how do you showcase competency? How do you showcase your knowledge? And this is where our team came up with the idea. We used NCARB's existing platforms, such as the AXP portfolio integration, and our students could put together a portfolio. Right now, my students put together 5 portfolios in the middle of their second year. Each portfolio is dedicated to your schools. One for SCI-Arc, one for Woodbury, one for Cal Poly, one for industry on top of all of that. Well, they're maintaining their grades, and they're in class, and many of them are part-time students. So we said, all right, this is the redundancy that architects love to get rid of, right? We got this. This is our jam, right? What happens if we take the 52 KSAs and we put them into our portfolio that the student can use, walk right up to your university and say, I am ready to go. And sure, there may be differences between universities, and that's absolutely their right, of course. But it also gives us an apples to apples comparison. Then that same student, rather than making another portfolio for industry, takes that same portfolio with those 52 KSAs highlighted and walks up to industry and says, I'm going to go right into a firm here in San Diego or in LA, right? Can we use that same portfolio? The biggest thing I don't want our students to do across the nation is edit their competency. What I'm starting to hear is a lot of schools say, well, wait a second, don't show this. I just want to see that. Take away this, but please add that. And I tell our students specifically, take away nothing, flood them with everything, right? Because you don't know what's going to be on the opposite end of that portfolio review. So these are the things we're going to look at today as well. Can these 52 KSAs be utilized as a tool for acceptance into a university? Now, of course, every school's different, and there's things that they're going to want to add and things that they're going to want to focus in on, but it does allow us all to have an apples to apples comparison. Next slide, please. So return on investment, this is NCARB's, I think, favorite slide, which was, what do they get out of the deal, right? Because to make this truly a functioning thing that can happen over a long period of time, we need to show our deliverables, right? And the first thing I was highlighting is accessibility. But not just accessibility that we've already seen, and I know NCARB feels this way, and I know your colleges feel this way, opening doors to all. It's the accessibility to continuing to open up broader audiences. That adult learner who may not go on to your university because they already have a bachelor's has a pathway to licensure, right, through accessibility. That person who's getting retooled has a pathway to licensure. For those jurisdictions that do not have a NAB accredited program as part of their jurisdictional requirement for licensure, they too can see themselves along that pathway. So it's been a really great opportunity for kind of using the workforce symposiums to cast that wider net of acceptance. Of course, this also allows us as a national organization to start introducing state acceptance. Not all states are as aggressive as California, and some states still have very arcane rules in which their licensing process can happen. But here at the state of California, we have some phenomenal opportunities to grow. So we can start showing what acceptance can look like at state levels. Of course, regional workforce. The biggest thing that came out of this conversation was regional demand is different. In Louisiana, their construction detailing needs to address climate change and flooding. It is not the same construction detailing that we're going to see in the Palisades after these fires. We need to address fire-rated assemblies and start to show that earlier in schools. Every region is going to be hit with this climate emergency differently, so every detailing package needs to start to look a little bit unique as a result. Of course, at a university level, that's not what I'm asking. I'm saying here at a local colleges, we can start to address regional difference in construction methodology. And this is something everybody really seems to get behind. Portfolio integration, once again, this single idea that a student can really give it all. This is my portfolio. This is what I learned in Revit. This is what I learned in Design Studio, right? This is what I'm going to bring to Pomona. This is what I'm going to bring to Woodbury. This is what I'm going to bring to the AIA or to a job, right? Baseline competency, we're starting introducing this idea across the nation, and of course, national and international opportunities. Next slide. So the participants of this workforce symposium, our goal as a group, the Coalition of Community College Architectural Programs, is of course we want to have the NCARB directors and regional leaders plus our directors and regional leaders meeting together. So Region 6 would be our region, we'd be getting together. We're kind of doing this trial. Hosted at community colleges because we are dedicated to workforce readiness and our funding comes from that. Of course, I reached out to the AAA large firm roundtable, and they've seemed very excited because once again, this allows them to address that regional workforce demand. Of course, we'll reach out to our allied organizations such as AIA, NOMA, and SERA. And it's also expandable to non-NAB affiliated schools. So they may want to have a say of how this will unfurl. And of course, our allied industries. So the demand, all right, here we are. So is there any trial balloons for this? So I mentioned, first off, Region 4 has an educational summit already. Charlie Sheffield at Sinclair College helps host these, and we have an example of how regional symposiums can start to happen. We have a funding mechanism how these can happen and how they're funded through the regions themselves. So we have a tool that we can use as an example of how our workforce symposiums can already be funded and laid out and marketed. Of course, we're here today at the 2025 California Forge Ahead Summit. Here, we're showing them an example of what we need, right? Our regional workforce demands will be different. Our school acceptance will be slightly different. So we have a chance to run this trial to see if we can get some of these things to work. The goal is maybe these all work. All 52 KSAs are manageable. Or some of these aren't manageable, or some of these aren't as important, or some of these are important, or our region may need to have a different asterisk for something specific. Coastal Commission or something unique. Florida could be different as well. So it gives us a chance to just talk about how do we tailor this to suit our own needs. Of course, we can build upon the AXP portfolio integration, so we have examples of that. Workforce timely needs to address directly from industry. The nice thing about laying this out is our colleges, because we do have demands from industry, we can act a little faster, hopefully, than our university partners. So that way, if something like a technology starts to come into play, our schools can piggyback. We can say, hey, listen, universities, why don't you let us take some of this technological component to it? We can move that forward, but we'll work together. You give us this, and we'll help you with that. I can see this being a great, hand-in-hand situation. Of course, a statewide understanding of competency and voice for all programs. Now, moving into fiscal year 2026 to 2028, CCAP would like to start helping with the VET and vet the new pathways. As many of you know, the NCARB passed in September the 16 competencies towards licensure. The education committee that I'm on is still working out what that looks like and what competencies look like. So how can CCAP be supportive of that? And what can we do to support that new pathway? Next slide, please. And it's even possible that our group can start to look at what competencies look like. Could Woodbury host some competencies? Can Palomar host some competencies? And who knows where this goes and how this unfolds? But by getting us all in the room, now we have a place where we can have a conversation of what competency looks like. And this competency even get tailored a little bit because of our conditions for regional needs. Next slide, please. So now we've got this great opportunity. Workforce readiness, universities working together, colleges working together. I know I've worked with a lot of you over the years, and it's amazing how well you've accepted these ideas and how you're already doing these things in your schools. All we're asking is for us to start to look at the next steps of what this collaboration could be like. Cool. One more slide. And now my ask. And you too can be part of the Coalition of Community College Architectural Programs. So if you'd want to take part, we would love to have you as members, all of you as members, whether as institutions or as individual members. We are hosting our coalition's going to get together. We're going to be hosting it at the same time as the AIA event in Boston. So that way, if you're attending the national AIA event, you can come on by and check out our organization as well. We'll be laying out these 52 competencies in greater depth on a regional level. We're also going to be hosted at the BAC. So it's going to be a nice opportunity for you to check out that school as well. And we're going to be giving tours of Mass. The architectural firm is going to allow us to go into their facilities, and we're going to look at some of their facilities and have a private tour. So we'd love you to take part. Yeah. Thank you very much.